Hi, I'm Matt Crowley. Welcome to Venture Capital Press. This webinar is going to be on trademarks. So trademarks are a way of trying to prevent your customers from being confused about which product they're actually buying. So a trademark could be the name of your company, the name of the product. It could be a logo, or it could be what's called a tagline, like Coca-Cola, it's the real thing. It's the real thing would be a tagline. So there are different levels of protection for trademarks. The first one is state trademark law protection. And that one's pretty easy and doesn't actually require a filing in most instances. If I want to use Coca-Cola as an example, Coca-Cola, if I come up with that on my own, I could just put a little TM underneath the name. Doesn't have to be big, but it needs to be readable. And if I put TM, that tells anyone who looks at that product that I'm claiming that name for that product class. If you see an R with a circle, that means that someone has registered the trademark with the federal government. That gets done through the USPTO, U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. And that requires a two-part filing. So the first part of the filing is to tell the USPTO that you're claiming Coca-Cola for soda pop beverages and in that particular class. The USPTO has a list of classes. There are several dozen. You could pick to use the trademark for colas. You could pick to use it for TV sets or car engines. There's all sorts of categories. Normally, you wouldn't claim the name in all categories because you're probably not going to do those businesses. And to do a federal trademark registration properly, usually a lawyer will charge somewhere around $1,000 per class per application. So you want to do it for the ones that are most meaningful to you. Once you've claimed that you do intend to use that name, the part A of the filing, then you need to be able to show the USPTO that you actually were the first in commerce to actually sell whatever the product is. So until you sell a can of Coca-Cola with the beverage in it and the logo and the name being used, until then you can't actually get a federal registered mark. Once you prove that you made a sale in that category, then the USPTO will take your mark and they'll publish it in something called the CFR. It's the Congressional Federal Register. And it's sort of an old-time concept, but the idea is it puts the entire country on notice that, hey, for the next 30, 60 days, if somebody wants to challenge this registered mark, now would be the time to do it. Once the 30 to 60 days goes by, then the registered mark will be put on a fancy certificate and sent to you by the USPTO, and now you have federal protection. Most of my clients that are first-time entrepreneurs, initially they'll only go with state trademark protection. And the logic is they aren't quite ready to sell anything, but they would like to at least have some protection for their trademarks, so they'll use the TM. When they're now at a place where they have the resources to chase down evildoers that are misusing their mark, that would be the time that they'll probably go for the federal trademark registration. The federal trademark registration brings some extra benefits with it, in addition to using the R with the circle, which to sophisticated businesses will be an indicator, don't mess with these people, and give you that level of protection. It'll also allow you to not have to prove economic damages. Instead, there are statutory damages that make it easier to get paid when someone infringes or illegally uses your mark. So there are benefits to doing the federal registration. In terms of the trademark itself, so I said there were a couple categories. So the first one is obvious. So if I'm with Evoke Software Corporation, I'd like to make sure that no one else uses the Evoke name. So I would like to trademark that. And for Evoke Software Corporation, obviously I want to trademark that for software, not for car engines or jewelry. Then with respect to the logo, if we have a really cool logo and it's something that we plan on using for more than the next couple of months, it's not a placeholder, but something we really like and is important to the brand, then we'll trademark the logo. Then the taglines, I always counsel my clients that the taglines have less power to them. They're viewed as weaker marks. So at Evoke Software, where I was general counsel for a few years, we had a tagline, accurate data, infinite possibilities. And those of us in the legal department looked at each other and we had no idea why the marketing department thought that was a great idea, but we were happy to go get the registration. If anyone challenged us on it, we were going to have a tough time convincing anyone that that was a tagline that was only for Evoke and no customer would be confused if someone else used it. Kind of a tough argument. Now, trademarks are for things that you can touch. So pencils, cans of Coca-Cola beverages, a box of Kleenex tissues. For anything that's a service, you would use an SM, a service mark. If you're claiming state trademark protection, you'd still use the R with the circle when you register your service mark. Now, there are some things that simply cannot be trademarked. If you have a name that describes exactly what it is that you do, then you can't trademark that. So as an example, Automotive Insurance Marketplace describes exactly what that company does. You can't prevent other people from saying that they are also an automotive insurance marketplace. So most companies will try to come up with something a little fanciful. So Yahoo or Google or Experian are words that did not exist until those companies came into existence. So those would be very strong trademarks. You also don't want to use a trademark that describes the thing that you're selling. So Apple brand apples, not going to work. Apple brand computer, apples and computers, that's kind of fanciful. So Apple has a very strong trademark, although they did have to get into some arguments with the Apple Music record label that the Beatles had. But obviously those were different classes and ultimately they sorted it out. Another thing that you do not want to do in most cases with a trademark is you don't want to use a generic term and you don't want to allow people to use your trademark in a generic way. So the classic example is, I'm sorry that you just sneezed, would you like a Kleenex? Well, did you mean Kleenex brand facial tissue or did you mean any facial tissue and you're being a little lazy and saying it's Kleenex? Or would you mind making a Xerox copy for me? Do you mean a copy machine copy? So brands like Kleenex, brands like Xerox have to be very careful and they have to try to convince people not to use the term generically. The biggest problem can be your own marketing department because they will try to say, well, we can evoke your data was one thing that our marketing department at Evoke wanted to talk about. Problem is if you use your trademark not as an adjective, it's evoke software, and instead say it's a verb, we can evoke your data. Now, there's no reason that anyone else couldn't also use your trademark as a verb. So it would end up watering down the brand and make our trademark totally unenforceable. So you want to be very careful about committing what trademark lawyers will very dramatically call genericide. So if you follow those rules of the road, you should be in good shape and have a strong tool to help you with your branding. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you.